Imagine you're standing in the middle of a lavish auction where prized dogs are being sold for thousands of dollars. But then, a moment of silence. A skinny, scarred golden retriever is brought onto the stage. No one wants it. No one bids. It's abandoned, forgotten, until a young man steps up and says a single sentence that changes everything. What happened next? Why was this dog abandoned? And what makes it a legend? Before we go any further, let us know in the comments where in the world you're watching this from. And if you believe in heartwarming stories, don't forget to subscribe now, because tomorrow there's a special story for you. Rain poured down like cold needles, pounding against the glass windows of an old auction house in the heart of Texas. Flashing neon lights reflected off the worn wooden floor, where dozens of people were bidding on creatures that were seen as symbols of power and perfection. Smooth-coated terriers, powerful German shepherds, and bright blue-eyed huskies, all were treasures in the eyes of the crowd. Excited applause and laughter rang out as each dog stepped out, their prices quickly climbing into the thousands of dollars. Then, the excitement abruptly vanished when a golden retriever was brought onto the stage. The room suddenly became heavy, as if the air was compressed by an awkward silence. The lights fell, revealing before everyone's eyes a ravaged body, matted fur, so thin that ribs protruded through the tanned skin. It limped out, each step as if it were torture. But what made everyone shiver the most were its eyes. Those eyes, empty as an abyss, cold as ashes. Who had it belonged to? What had it believed in? And who had extinguished the light in its eyes like this? There was a snort from the front row. What is this? A man adjusted his vest collar, curling his lips. Who would spend money on a trashy dog like this? More laughter rang out, spreading like waves. Is it sick? Look at it, it probably won't live much longer. Why sell it? Let's get rid of it. The auctioneer was momentarily flustered, cleared his throat, trying to push the price down, but no one paid any attention. Outside, the rain was still falling. In the crowd, not a single hand was raised. No one wanted to touch a ruined creature. No one, except one. From the corner of the room, a young man stood up. His shirt was frayed, one sleeve slightly torn. His shoes were covered in mud, as if he had just come from a long and arduous journey. No one had paid any attention to him before, but now the entire room was staring at him, a mixture of surprise and contempt. What did you say? He walked slowly through the rows of seats, ignoring the whispers behind him. He did not look at the crowd. He did not look at the prices on the electronic board. He only looked into the dog's eyes. His gaze did not waver. Slowly, he knelt down, leveling his gaze with the dog's. And then he spoke, in a deep, confident tone, without a trace of doubt. I'll take it. The room froze for a moment. Someone chuckled, as if hearing the craziest thing in the world. Are you kidding? You'll take it? The boy didn't answer. He just slowly reached out his hand, a gentle hand, without possessiveness, without control, just a patient touch. The dog shivered slightly. It was used to rough hands, to painful blows, to ropes pulling hard. But this hand wasn't like that. For just a moment, like an instinct left over from a long time ago, it lifted its head slightly, quietly placing a part of its gaunt face in the palm of that hand. And in that moment, the whole room fell silent. The crowd was no longer laughing, because they had just witnessed something extraordinary. They had just witnessed a creature that had been abandoned by the world, that had given up all faith in humanity, being able to believe again. The boy leaned down gently, whispering something. No one heard, but everyone saw. The dog had changed. It was still sick. It was still hurt. It still bore the scars of the past. But for the first time, its eyes were no longer empty. A glimmer of light, something fragile, but very real. Hope. Hope was still there. It had never been completely extinguished. It was just waiting for someone to wake it up. The boy slowly stood up, looking at the auctioneer. How much? No one understood why they had suddenly fallen silent. No one understood why they could not look into the boy's eyes for more than 3 seconds. No one knows why, for a moment, they feel ashamed of themselves. But you do, right? If you've made it this far, it means that deep inside you is a seed of compassion, a seed just waiting to be watered and grow. And if you believe that every creature, no matter how abandoned, deserves a second chance, leave a like, because that's how we can spread kindness together. Because sometimes, all we need is someone willing to believe in us again. And sometimes, the most broken creature is the one who can teach us how to love the most. Have you ever seen someone like Blaze? Or maybe you were once Blaze? Leave a comment and share your thoughts. And don't forget, the story isn't over yet. Blaze has just found a small ray of hope. But what lies ahead? Stay tuned for the next part, because this is just the beginning. The rain had long since stopped, but the Texas sky was still streaked with gray clouds, streaked like old wounds that had not yet healed. In the small farmhouse nestled in the middle of a vast pasture, Lucas sat on the porch steps, his eyes on the creature curled up in the corner of the wooden barn. Blaze. That was what he had named it. A small flame extinguished, but then set ablaze again. But could it really be revived? Since bringing Blaze here, Lucas had never forced him to do anything. No collar, no leash, no dry commands. Only patience and something deeper, understanding, because Lucas knew that wounds could not be healed by force. So he waited. And you know what? Sometimes waiting was the most powerful form of love. Blaze did not bark, did not howl, not reacting to anything except the things that scared him. Whenever Lucas stepped closer, Blaze flinched. Whenever a door slammed, he flinched. Whenever a hand rose too quickly, his eyes darkened, as if preparing for a blow. What had happened to him in the past? Who had taught him that humans were the scariest things in the world? Lucas didn't know, but he knew something else. That no matter how painful Blaze's past was, he still had a present. He still had a future. And if you've ever felt like you were just a shadow of yourself, just a broken and scared person, then maybe you'll understand how Blaze felt now. The first day, Blaze didn't eat. He just lay there, silent like a forgotten statue. The second day, he ate a little, but only when Lucas wasn't looking. The third day, Lucas tried something else. He didn't speak. He didn't try to get close. He just sat down, far enough away from Blaze that he wouldn't feel threatened. He opened a book, letting the words flow gently past his lips. No commands, no pressure, just his voice, a sound that wouldn't hurt anyone. And then, after a week, the first thing happened. Blaze turned her head slightly, just a little, but Lucas saw. He didn't turn his back on the world anymore. And you know what? Sometimes, even a small step is a big step. That day, the sunset spread across the fields like a stream of honey, dyeing everything it touched golden. Lucas was still sitting there, reading. Blaze was still standing there, a few feet away, but no longer turned away. A gentle breeze blew. And then, slowly, as if every fiber in his body was fighting to overcome fear, Blaze took a step toward Lucas. Just one step. But for a creature who had once stopped believing in the world, it was a long way. Lucas said nothing. He just put the book down, gently, looking straight into Blaze's eyes. No judgment, no expectations. Blaze looked back. There was not so much fear. There was only one thing, fragile, but more precious than all of them. Trust. Have you ever felt like you couldn't trust anyone anymore? Have you ever wanted to step towards someone, but then backed away because you were afraid you would be hurt again? If you have, congratulations, because it means you still have a heart. And a heart that is still afraid is also a heart that is still capable of love, like Blaze. And like Lucas, if you followed this far, it means you have a seed of compassion, something the world needs more of. So why don't we spread the word? Leave a like, not only to support this story, but to say you believe in second chances. Because sometimes, all someone needs is someone willing to believe in them. Blaze has taken the first step, but can he really trust a human again? And what will Lucas do to help him heal? But more importantly, there's something Lucas doesn't know about Blaze's past. A secret that, when revealed, will change everything. Are you curious? The Texas sky was a deep blue, and the night fell like a velvet curtain silently over the farm. The stars twinkled high above, but on the ground, in the vast space, there was only a faint yellow light coming from the small wooden barn, where Blaze lay curled up on the soft straw. Lucas sat beside him, his eyes watching his every breath. Blaze no longer had his back to him now, but there was still something wrong, something he couldn't quite reach. He noticed that, although there were times when Blaze began to trust him, whenever Lucas accidentally raised his hand too quickly, or when there was a loud noise, Blaze would flinch, his eyes bewildered as if he were seeing a ghost from the past. He didn't understand. Until one night. For the first time, Lucas noticed the scars on the back of Blaze's neck. He lifted the matted fur from its neck, and the marks stood out in the light. They weren't ordinary wounds. They were deep, long cuts, clearly from the leash being held too tight for too long. He froze. Blaze had been bound. But by whom and why? A cold wind blew through the farm, but it wasn't the cold that made Lucas shiver, but the slowly dawning truth. Blaze wasn't just an abandoned dog. He had been held captive. But why? He didn't know. But someone did. A few days later, on an early winter afternoon, an older man drove into the farm in an old pickup. His hair was white, and his face was lined with deep wrinkles. He stepped out of the car, but his eyes weren't on Lucas. He looked straight at Blaze, and Blaze stopped dead. No barking, no growling, but something flashed in his eyes, an old memory. The man took a deep breath, then spoke slowly, his voice low. "You don't know who this dog really is." Lucas stood still. Blaze isn't just some abandoned dog. He was a soldier. Blaze wasn't an ordinary dog. He was a specially trained service dog. He served in a secret program. But then something happened. Lucas clenched his fists. What happened to him? The man, his name was Henry, was silent for a long moment, then spoke. He saw something he shouldn't have. And so, it was discarded. Those words were like a knife cutting through the air, leaving a heavy silence. Lucas looked down at Blaze. He was still silent, but his eyes were no longer empty. There was something hidden deep inside, something that had been buried and was now slowly awakening. But what had he seen? And more importantly, did those people leave him alone? Lucas felt the atmosphere become heavier after hearing Henry's words, but he still didn't understand everything. And then, a few days later, while he was feeding Blaze, a shiny black SUV pulled into the farm. Two men in long coats got out. Not neighbors, not strangers. They were here for Blaze. "We heard you were keeping a golden retriever." Lucas immediately stood in front of Blaze. "Blaze is mine." His voice was firm. "I'm not selling him." One of the men smiled faintly. "You don't understand, boy. He's not yours. He never was. Blaze now did not bark, did not howl, did not growl, but his eyes were dark, as if he was seeing old ghosts. Lucas did not care. He took a step forward, blocking Blaze like a solid shield. "I think you should leave." A strong wind swept through, stirring up dry leaves on the ground. There was a storm brewing in the Texas sky that day. But Lucas knew one thing for sure. Blaze was no longer a scared dog. He would not let anyone take him away. Never. There are scars that cannot be seen with the naked eye. There are wounds that have fallen asleep in the dark, but still smolder, waiting to rise. There are people like Blaze, hurt, abandoned, forgotten, but there is still a small light, just waiting for someone to believe. And if you have followed this far, it proves that your heart carries a great deal of love. Have you ever met someone like Blaze? Or have you been Blaze yourself? Please share this video, because this story is not just about one dog. It is about everyone who has lost their way, but is still finding their way back. Lucas has protected Blaze this time, but can he protect him forever? And what really happened in Blaze's past? There is a secret that has yet to be revealed. Lucas stood on the porch, staring at the sleek black SUV as it slowly rolled away from the farm. The car faded into the night, but he knew this silence was not the end. It was like a storm was about to hit, just waiting for the right moment to sweep away everything in its path. Blaze sat next to him, ears still cocked, eyes following the car as it disappeared into the dusty highway. Lucas placed his hand on its head, stroking it gently. "They'll come back, right?" Blaze didn't bark, didn't respond. But the way it shivered under Lucas's hand, he knew better than anyone. The danger wasn't over yet. Lucas went back into the house, sitting down at the old wooden table. Henry, the older man who had revealed some of the truth about Blaze, was leaning against the window, his eyes thoughtful. "They won't give up." His voice was hoarse, as if he had seen too much bad things in this world. Lucas crossed his arms. "Why?" "Blaze is just a dog." Henry shook his head. "Number, he's not just a dog." He pulled out a chair, sat down, and put his hands on the table, his voice low. "Do you remember how I said Blaze had special training?" Lucas nodded. Henry took a deep breath, as if the words he was about to say would change everything. Blaze was one of the best service dogs in a secret organization. He was trained not only to track, but also to detect danger, analyze scents, and even to detect things that humans couldn't see. Lucas felt his heart pounding. "You mean Blaze knows something?" Henry nodded slowly. Not just know, he saw. Lucas turned to look at Blaze. He remembered the moment when the two men in suits had appeared. Why wasn't Blaze afraid? Why didn't he run away? Why was he standing there, ready to fight? Lucas suddenly realized Blaze hadn't forgotten. He remembered everything. Everything he had seen. The nightmares he had had. The people who had ordered him around, beaten him, used him as a tool, then discarded him when he was no longer of any use. And now, they wanted him back. Lucas couldn't sleep. That night, He sat beside Blaze, watching him curl up in the corner. He knew this peace wouldn't last. He also knew that if he kept Blaze, he would be putting himself in danger. But if he let him go, would he be any different from those who had abandoned him? Lucas took a deep breath, then said softly, "We won't run away." Blaze lifted his head slightly, looking at Lucas. "You've been forced to do things you didn't want to do, right?" Blaze couldn't answer, but his eyes said it all. Lucas gently placed his hand on his head, his voice low. "This time, you will decide your own fate." And then, in the darkness of the Texas night, an important decision was made. Near dawn, a small noise rang out from afar. Lucas immediately jumped up. He looked out the window, his heart pounding. A black SUV was parked right in front of the ranch gate. He wasn't mistaken. They had returned. The shadows of two men passed by under the headlights. Lucas felt his chest tighten. They didn't knock this time. They had no intention of negotiating anymore. Blaze, now, stood up, his eyes no longer fearful. He knew what was coming. Lucas clenched his fists. If they thought he would let Blaze fall into their hands again, they were wrong. Have you ever felt like there was something you didn't know? Have you ever sensed an invisible danger approaching? Have you ever wondered what would happen if you chose to stand up instead of running away? Lucas knew he could run away right now, but he also knew there are moments in life when you can't turn back, and this was one of them. If you've made it this far, it means you're more than just an observer. You're a person with great compassion. Comment your thoughts on Blaze. Do you believe he can overcome his own darkness? And do you think, perhaps, that this is not just a story about a dog, but also a story about ourselves? Thank you for staying all the way here. Not everyone has the time to listen to a story like this. But if you have been with us until the end, it means that you have a heart that knows how to love, that knows how to appreciate the meaningful things in life. Blaze is not just a dog. Blaze is a symbol of those who have fallen, who have been hurt, who have thought they had no more chances. But just one person believes. Just one arm reaches out. Just one chance is given. Anyone can stand up, can run, can become their own legend. Perhaps in our world, there are still many Blazes who are being forgotten. It could be a small creature. It could be a person who has been crushed. Or it could be you. But remember, you are not alone. You always have a chance to start over. You always deserve love. If this story has touched your heart, please leave a like, not only to support the video, but also to spread the belief that everyone deserves a second chance. Share this story with people who you think need a ray of hope. Maybe one day, you will be the one to save someone, like Lucas saved Blaze. And before we end, let us know. How do you rate this story from 0 to 10? We would love to know what you think. And if you like emotional, meaningful, and humane stories like this, don't miss out on the special things waiting for you in the next video. A story that is even more intense, deeper, and maybe will change the way you look at life forever. See you on the next journey.